So let's imagine now that a conversation has begun between you and somebody in your team. You're looking at, let's say in this example, dealing with online learning, and you're exploring. That's all you're doing. You're becoming curious and exploring what the experience is like for the individual. Now, what you're not doing is diagnosing or curing. You're just curious to know what's going on. In a kind of storyboard fashion, what happens before, what happens during, and then what might change if we make some adjustments. You're not really at liberty as the manager to start talking about dyslexia or ADHD or any of these terms. And as the employee, you're under an obligation to be honest and truthful and not hide anything, to be engaged in this process. However, some of the experiences, and these are sort of drawn from my experience of what it's like to be online learning, can be quite unusual. So some of the examples I've had are, I'm okay reading the left-hand side of the screen, but I'm not so good on the right-hand side. Okay. I look at words and I get the beginning and the end of a word, but the letters in the middle can float off into the distance. Okay, interesting. I am really motivated to learn, but I can only bring myself to start to look at the learning material 2 nights before the deadline. As I'm reading through the material, my focus and attention moves all over the place, and I start reading about one subject, but my mind moves on to 1,000 other things with random connections between them all. There might be other instances where people describe their experience using physical gestures. For example, it feels as though my head is being surrounded by computer screens and I can't make sense of any of them. That's a metaphorical way, a physical metaphor, physical symbolic way of describing what's going on. I've had other people describe a feeling of a fog rising up through their body into their eyes, and they stop being able to even see, focus, or read the screen. So all these are examples of what it's like for somebody to be dealing with their particular neurodiversity. Now, it might be at the end of that process that the reasonable thing to do is to say, do you think one of the things that we could do to help you here is have you take a cognitive assessment? So if we go back to some of the earlier legal cases, if you start acting as a manager as if you're an expert in a field, or you start using these terms which can lead some people to feel, let's say the word offended or judged or criticised, then you're on dangerous territory until you get a professional or a psychiatric insight into what's going on for that person. And at the same time, that process may reveal just in itself some new insights that can help an individual to develop their own reasonable adjustments, tiny changes which will help them to improve the way in which they deal with, in this case, online learning. So I hope that takes you some way towards what that initial dialogue between management and employee, or the two of you, is going to be like, so that each party feels that it's fair and open and they can trust each other without getting involved in stigmatizing language.